I apologize for the delay in starting the radio show today. We've had some difficulties with our computers in broadcasting, but we are now online, I'm glad to say. So this is Saad in southeast London, and this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. Very shortly, I'll be joined by my colleague Gregory. Gregory, you're with me now. Welcome, Gregory. How are you, and how is the weather where you are? Can you hear me, Gregory? Hello? Gregory, I can see you there. You're joined online. Just, I can't hear you. Okay, you're a bit faint. Can you speak a little louder? I can't hear you again. There was just a moment I could hear you. Let's just wait a moment for that. Dear listeners, just want to remind you, this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. We are on every Tuesday. Normally it's 6 p.m. UK time. Today, because of some technical issues, we had to start a bit late, but we are live now. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message, by Aprushing. And every week we have a new topic for discussion. The topic tonight is, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? Are we living in climate change or the final judgment? I'm just going to double check if Gregory can hear me and I can hear him. Gregory, are you there? Okay, I hear you, just a bit faint. So if you can either speak a bit louder or make the volume louder somehow. You can hear me on the phone. Okay. It's just from my side, I'm hearing it a bit faintly. So I might have to ask you to say it a bit louder, but I can just about hear you. Okay, so dear listeners, the aim of the show, as I say, is to introduce you to the spirit. And I'd like to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message, in the Light of Truth, by Aprushing, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Aprushing. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, I want to remind you the topic that we're discussing tonight is, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? Are we living in the climate change or the final judgment? If you have any questions or comments, you can join us in the show by contacting us by calling, texting, or WhatsApp to our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp, as I said. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. And if you scroll down almost to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. Now, I'm not going to look up the meaning of the words in the topic tonight. Again, to remind everybody, the topic we are discussing tonight is, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? Because I believe most of our listeners would be familiar with these words. So let us more look at what climate change is, in a way. Let's because we talk about it a lot in terms of environment. We're experiencing weather changes, obviously, even natural disasters, well, very heavy and frequent nowadays in their effect. So, Gregory, my first question really is, is climate change really real? What I mean by that is it due to the human activities? For example, we've had the Industrial Revolution, I think it's like 100 to 200 years ago, which was a massive shift, a technological shift for humanity, with the expansion of production and speed of production in terms of foods and goods, and from moving from manual labor to machines. It doesn't mean all the manual labor disappeared, but a lot of shift from manual labor to machines. And that produced a lot of pollution, an effect on the earth, environment. So, which, of course, the temperatures have gone up in climate. We called it, forgotten the word now, but we thought it was just heat only. But in the end, we realized that there has been some cold, extreme cold weather, as well as the extreme hot weathers happening in the climate. So, Gregory, I want to ask you, is this climate change effect that we are experiencing regularly on Earth now, is it due to human activity? Okay. I can't hear anything. Are you talking there, Gregory? I can't hear you. You know what I'll do? Let me connect you back to the show, just in case there's something not quite working there. So let me just do that. Just going to, so apologies listeners, we seem to still have one or two issues. I'm just going to try and connect Gregory back in. I hope that will solve the problem. Okay, here we go. We'll just give a little moment for us, listeners. Gregory, are you there now? That's much better. That's okay, much better. The connection. Now. Okay, yes. So I don't know, could you hear me, Gregory, with that question about climate change? Is it due to human activity?
Yes. Well, thanks for the question. Because the basis of our discussion is spiritual, one must provide a comprehensive and all-embracing answer to your question.
Okay.
The question talks about the so-called climate change. First, we must ask ourselves, change from what to what? Things are always in motion anyway. Therefore, the climate in the world of matter is also in motion. So climate is always changing. Therefore, if one must consider the question at all, it must be which aspects is it that we are considering? You talked about human activities. Of course, before human personalities came on earth, before they incarnated, the environment, of which the climate is one of them, kept on evolving. It did not stop in its evolution. For in the world of matter, in which it is temporal, there is a beginning, a maturity, and then an end to it, in which things go back to their primeval state. Now, the climate change you are referring to is basically that which is perceptible to the five senses of the human personality. That physical perception is what you are referring to. The human personality can affect its environment, first, spiritually, secondly, in thoughts, and then in the physical, which is referred to as gross material. Motion has always been going on, and the climate has always been evolving and changing. The effect of the human activities has to be considered physically, in one's thoughts, and in one's spiritual activities. If, however, you find that in each of these, that which is spiritual and that which is of one's thoughts, and then the physical, observable activities, if they have to be considered, then these ones will be considered as perturbations. That means disturbing the harmony which initially nature has put in place. When you have that the disturbance is so much as to shift the harmonious movement of that evolution, then the scenario which you yourself described now is understandable. So you will find that in considering the changes in the environment, which one of which the climate is a part, the spiritual attitude of the majority plays a part. If their attitude is ignoble, in which their attitude is directed downwards towards evil things, the effect spiritually will be that of heaviness. That heaviness, in accordance with the laws of creation, will ensure that there is a sinking of the ethereal environment or of the immediate ethereal environment. If one considers one's thoughts, if these thoughts are heavy and are ignoble, they will also have an effect on the nearest neighborhoods in the ethereal environment. And finally, if one's activities, the combined activities of human personalities on earth, if they are ignoble, they have an impact on the immediate perceptible environment and climate. So such effects are perturbations that tend to shift the harmonious running of the laws, of the earth from its harmonious environment. It is that shift which is now being debated. The shift must not be considered only in physical terms that are perceptible, but must also be considered in non-physical terms. That means the effects in the ethereal environment or the ethereal climate, and also in the spiritual environment in which man has contributed to. That's the net effect is what is now being experienced. And the question is, does it affect the physical environment which we all are observing? That question has to be answered by each personality by first looking at their activities, secondly considering their thoughts, and finally considering their spiritual standing or their inner attitude, whether it be noble or ignoble. If it is noble, one will find that the correct harmonious swinging of the earth in its orbit, that will not bring catastrophes. Or if catastrophes are to abide, the individuals will be warned way ahead to prepare themselves. If, however, you find that their thoughts are ignoble, their intuitions are ignoble, and also their earthly activities are also ignoble, these combined effects have an impact which causes the wobbling of the climate, which wobbling is likely to bring ill effects. But the individual must reflect very deeply in these three different categories.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this comprehensive picture that you have painted for us in how, first of all, what climate change we are referring to when we talk about change. Of course, it's something drastic, not a small change, otherwise it's hardly noticeable. So something drastic is happening or being observed. That is another world, you can say, being affected. And I know we gave example of thoughts, that we know there's a world where we have thoughts and they have an impact on us and the world. So this material human activity, well, there's more to it than just material, actually. As you pointed out, there's also the spiritual side of how our activity is, whether it is something noble or ignoble, with our thoughts, with our wishes or desires. So that all of these things have an effect. That's what has been pointed out. We may not be aware of that. We just see, like I mentioned, the Industrial Revolution, which was a big revolution from like a mechanization of human activity. So yes, but then it also has other impact. Even we know social aspect. Again, that looks on appears to be material, but no, it affects us as human beings in our thoughts and our emotions and our, within the spirit as well. So that's what we have to come to realize that or recognize that. So thank you for that, Gregory. Now, there's something, Gregory, maybe we don't say it many times, but there's, you could say, a balance. Let's say there are finite resources, and if we try to convert the whole earth into just, let's say, using all its resources, wouldn't be much left for others, not on other beings, animals, plants. We know that that has an effect as well. That's part of the reason we call this climate change. The jungles, area of jungle with the forests is reduced, and so the oxygen that comes from there is less, and they used to before call it carbon dioxide gases. I've forgotten the exact word now. The global warming gases. They used to say global warming. That's the phrase we used to use, and now we realize it's not just warming. There's extreme weathers, but there was basically an increase in that with human activity. So, Gregory, let's see where the point we are at currently, Gregory. I know the world is having conferences and treaties or some agreements to counteract this negative aspect of this climate change. So my question now, Gregory, is, have we reached a point now where it's like we cannot return, let's say, to a more balanced world? So it's like a point of no return. Have we gone beyond the point of no return from the balanced world to an unbalanced world, or the unstable world, let me say, if that is possible to think like that. So, Gregory, have we reached this sort of point now?
Such a question as yours, one must consider the initial structure where there is harmonious development in which you have a balance. And then, with the knowledge of the initial structure, then one may now go forward and say, look, what is it now? What are the perturbations that have been introduced into it? Or by perturbations, one is referring to the disturbances, which disturbances are not part of that in which you have harmony. The question becomes, you cannot yet say yes or no, because we are not aware, or so-called scientists are unable to present to us the initial structural balance, albeit dynamic, and now basically the disturbances which are perceptible in concrete terms. These perturbations which is mentioned, if one says, oh, things have moved so badly and this is point of no return, then one must define what point of no return is. That particular scenario, there are no evidences in comparison to the initial dynamic structure in which you have harmony. Only then can one say, oh, well, these things have gone to the point of no return. However, investigations will continue until concrete evidence, not just superficial evidence, concrete evidence are provided on what it was or what it should be, even at this rate, and then considering what the perturbations are. The case of carbon dioxide you mentioned and the ozone layer, these are partial evidence. Of course, they have a negative effects in the dynamic motion in which the Earth is going through. But one cannot use them alone and say, this is how things have gone and therefore point of no return. The Earth, in going through its motion, is able to recover from one phase to another phase. If, however, there is continuity in which that ozone layer is continuously expanding, then maybe evidence can be provided to say, fair enough, this is a point of no return.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for that answer and explanation. Yes, in your first question, you answered there's motion. Everything is in motion. And so, yes, and in this situation now, Have we reached a particular point of no return? Well, certain things have to be done and reached to that point for us to realize that. So we have not got that information, you can say, or perception to talk about that right now. So yes, what I want to do is now slightly shift to another angle. We talk about the climate change, as I mentioned, but there's which is due to the human activity. At least some part is due to human activity, because as you mentioned at the beginning, climate changes, everything changes. It's just the amount of change, you can say, that which part plays a bigger role, or another part plays another role. Just so it's all about how much impact each of us is having. So I want to look at more of the human angle now, in a way where we stand today on this earth. So, Gregory, we've seen a lot of technological advancement, not only from the Industrial Revolution, but even in the current times. And then, let's say, last century, we've had these world wars, which never happened, and people may be wondering, and with just also going back to technology, things are so fast and you can communicate so easily nowadays, which you couldn't do, and the speed of this change of connectivity and so on has been very fast in the last, let's say, 100 years compared to the development of the maybe 500 years. The speed is much, much quicker. And maybe the technology is the reason for that. But I want to look at from the spiritual angle as well of the human beings. Yes, the population of human beings is also multiplied compared to what it used to be, maybe 100 years ago, in billions. So I'm wondering, Gregory, is there is that an advancement of human beings in terms of their abilities, or their I'm also, because I'm looking at that world war that happened, I'm thinking that must be due to hatred, because you wouldn't have a war unless there's some hatred going on. So, Gregory, can we look at that and see how does man stand? How does humanity stand is over this period? Of course, it is not World War right now. Maybe it might look like we might be heading again towards that, but that happened in to be clear, the First World War was 1914 to 1919, and the Second World War 1939 to 1945. So it's just over 100 years ago. And that's still in quotes in our time. So I want to understand, Gregory, although we seem to have advanced in one level, but also we seem to have advanced in, let's say, hatred or in troubles, human beings living together in peace and harmony. We talk about peace and harmony. So what does that tell about us human beings in this 100-year period, the last 100 years?
It tells you about the spiritual decline. Very simply, the spiritual decline is different from that which you see physically. For if there were no decline, you wouldn't have one group fighting against the other just for nothing, because they want to show they are stronger. It broke down in moral lessons. So there could be advancements in the so-called sciences, but the maturity to control that which has been fabricated is not there. So you find in the first case that which has been fabricated is used for war. The same thing happens to the aircraft. First, there is a simple fabrication, and then quickly it is spread out for war. The same thing happened to explosives. First, it was used for the mines, and then subsequently to blow up fellow human personalities. So you may have advancement physically in the so-called sciences, but there is a definite decline in advancement or spiritual maturity.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for that answer. And again, the picture you've shown us there. And then my next question is, why has that happened?
Sorry, come again?
Yes, my next question is, why has that happened, this decline, spiritual decline?
That's a very difficult question. Difficult because first, man is only able to grasp that which affects him directly. That which has an impact on the individual indirectly is ignored. When one is considering physical things and human activities in that which is physical, one can easily observe its impact. With one's thoughts, these thoughts many cannot see, but the effects of thoughts on the individual or on masses can easily be elucidated. If one goes further, one's intuitions, which intuitions are even denied by many a human personality because they themselves are not convinced that their inner core is of spirit. Then talking about the activities of the spirit, all those things are dismissed. Whereas it is the maturity, the inner maturity, that has an impact on one's thoughts. And one's thoughts should have an impact on one's physical activity. If you have one's intuition in a state where it is not even perceived at all, that means the intuitive perception is dead. You have the scenario where one's thoughts are very well calculated in cheating, in all sorts of ignoble things. That is how slavery came about. All the wickedness you find here on it, all these things came about due to crafty calculation in trying to have an advantage over others, legally or illegally. So you find that once the activities of the spirit are not well realized to draw the human beings to that which is noble, then it sinks down and it does not see that for noble continuity in a place like the earth, which is just one globe, for harmony to persist, it must be one for all and all for one. Therefore, with the activities of one's thoughts being directed by the earthly intellect, you find that a balance can never be achieved. And that lack of balance in maturity, in spiritual maturity, is what precipitates all the wars that you find that has manifested. Even before the First World War, there were wars in the 18th century. There were conquests and all sorts of terrible things. And then the First World War, and before long, the Second World War.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for that. Again, your answer there. Slowly, we are painting this picture of how humanity has declined spiritually, and you could say even materially, if you look at it, not in the scientific advancement, but in terms of, you could say, being distributed amongst the fellow human beings. We see some people with advantage, others, without the, people are suffering. Not that there's meant to be equality, but there should be a fellow, love for your fellow human beings. And that is not being shown in all this time that we are talking about. So thank you for that. I just want to let the listeners know that you're listening to the Spiritual Discussion Program on Bless Radio. Normally we start our show at 6 p.m. and unfortunately due to technical issues we couldn't start on that time. We started about 6:40 p.m. and we go on till 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, message, message.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? Are we living in climate change or the final judgment? If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting, that is Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. And if you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in for tonight. So I'll and just at the end of this show, which is 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to a recording of this show again on YouTube. Again, you have to type in the same words in the search box, which are Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1, space, Grail Message, space, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? And Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number 1 there again. Now, Gregory, I want to now look at this. We have talked about, the topic tonight is, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? So the next, what we haven't discussed is the final judgment. Now this word final judgment, it's, let's say, coming from Christian or Islamic, and I think it may be also in Jewish, not so well illustrated as such in the Jewish tradition, but it's common in this Islamic and Christian tradition. The other traditions, Eastern ones, there's not a direct reference to it, I will say. It's not really mentioned. So people might be wondering, oh, is this only for certain people? What is this final judgment? So let me just quickly read something first, what people think. This is what I found on Wikipedia. I just thought I'd better share this. So it's also known, this final judgment, as the last judgment, or judgment day, or the apocalypse. And so there are two sort of definitions given there about the apocalypse, which is saying the complete final destruction of the world as described in the biblical book of Revelation. The bells ringing is supposed to usher in the apocalypse. Somebody's used that quote. So, or reference. So, Gregory, I just want to ask, this final judgment, or another word is the apocalypse, it's here is defined as the complete final destruction of the world. So is that what is meant to happen on this judgment, final judgment?
No.
Okay. Let me give another, before I ask you further on that. Okay, so this is from Islam. Again, it's from Wikipedia. It says, resurrection of the dead, resurrection day, is a fundamental belief where Allah, that is of course God, resurrects all of humanity from the dead to be judged for their earthly deeds, determining their eternal destination in paradise, heaven, or hell. This is a pivotal event, involves the end of the world, the resurrection of bodies from graves, facing the scales for deeds, let me just not continue on that. Let me just, Greggy, let me repeat that, so it's because there's a lot of words here. So this is about, this is again talking about final judgment, which is known in Islam as the resurrection of the dead, which is, or judgment day is another way it is expressed, which is a fundamental belief where Allah, God, resurrects all of humanity from the dead to be judged for their earthly deeds, determining their eternal destination in paradise, heaven, or hell. So, is that correct explanation or description of the judgment, final judgment?
No, it is not, because that which has been expressed there paints a distorted picture. It is the resurrection of all that has not been animated within the human soul. That is what needs to be animated. If, however, that which has been animated, because it has received the power, it will then bring out that which is ignoble, if that which is within the soul is ignoble. But if that which is within the soul is noble, it will then come out. So it is a more of purification. The process of purification and all that is ignoble will now be filtered out. If, however, the human personality that bears these qualities has so many ignoble features within it because it has made personal decision using the free will granted to it, then the purification will be so painful to it that it may then lose consciousness. Then it has to revert to its primeval state. It is not destroyed, but it loses its consciousness and reverts to its primeval state as it was at the beginning. If, however, that which is within the human soul is pure, is noble, these will come to the fore and will now be able to make use of the power it has received to keep on building upon it until it becomes self-conscious and subsequently is able to move upwards to its home as a self-conscious human personality back in paradise, where it is able to walk in support of others, in that scenario, one for all and all for one.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for that, again, picture and explanation you've given. What I'm seeing is the way the resurrection has been described in Islamic or teaching or understanding. It is taken from more, let's say, physical aspect rather than the spiritual aspect, which where you have been explaining from. You talked about the soul, so judgment of the soul, or the activities of the soul, or you say what was not animated, that is what is being resurrected. Whereas in Islamic, in this explanation about resurrection of the dead, it's talking about the good deeds and the bad earthly deeds, it said, and that is what is being judged. And the result of it is either you get to a paradise or heaven or hell. But that again, and you, when I try to connect the two pictures, I see, one is looking very literally in the physical way, but there's a spiritual way, because you mentioned a consciousness in your answer. So the way I look at it is, I would say, okay, one picture is, let's say, a bit narrow and not really right, as you said. The other one, which you explained, is a deeper level of understanding of the same event, if I can, about this resurrection or the final judgment. It's so in a way, one could say one is not, one explanation gives more deeper, as I say, understanding, and the other one, let's say, not exactly accurate, but it's more literal, physical, and it's not a picture that somebody who's it requires more work, let's say, to get a more clear understanding about it. So sometimes things are you can say not correct, but it doesn't mean there's not everything is incorrect. It's partially correct, but in another, and we need to be aware not to dismiss everything in one, just because one or two some things are not quite correct. So I almost feel there's things are given in part, and not the part is not complete. That's what people need to understand, that there's something is in part, not complete. And if you just take only part, you will not get you will get only part understanding, not a complete understanding. So that's something to be conscious of. So thank you for that, Gregory. Now I just want to look at the first one I mentioned, Gregory, about this picture where it's complete destruction of the world, because people call it the final judgment, it's the end. So, which is the final destruction of the world. So surely, Gregory, one day the earth will, let's say, everything has a lifespan in the physical. The sun will last, let's say, so many billion of years. The earth will last so many billion of years. It will eventually, how can I say, I don't want to use the word explode, but it will have its end of its cycle. Can we, does that have any connection with this final judgment? Let me say like that. The life cycle of a, let's say, planet or the sun, whatever number of billion years it is does it have any connection with the final judgment at all?
One only needs to observe activities here on earth. If one observes in the farm where crops are planted, each crop has its own span. Even the human personality does not live forever here on earth. It's born, it matures, it grows, and then it gets to a certain stage. The spirit withdraws, and the physical body, which is of matter, subsequently disintegrates. The world of matter is temporal. That means it comes into being because it's constituted with different types of radiation. From then, it matures. That means it goes through an evolution. It gets to its peak before gradually of matter. That being the case, you will find that is in accordance with the laws of creation. In the case where you have time in which the end flows back to the beginning. So it is very natural. It is not unnatural. That which is referred to as the so-called last judgment refers basically not to the world of matter, because you do not judge matter. Matter has no free will. But the human personality that have incarnated in the world of matter are granted a period of maturity in which you have that, having incarnated on the earth, they are granted that period where they have to evolve from their states of unconsciousness to a state of consciousness and subsequently self-consciousness. That period in which has been granted to them, it is hoped that they will make use of that period to fulfill the duties, those duties which have accrued to them to ensure self-consciousness. Therefore, you will find that that period falls within the time in which the world of matter, or certain parts of the world of matter, came into existence, and before too long, that world of matter will have to mature to the extent where it has to dissolve, or it will undergo disintegration. Initially, it was integrated. This time, it will have to undergo some disintegration to return to its primeval substance. Therefore, the human personalities that have incarnated, it is expected that they would have matured to such an extent that they are able to live back to their origin in accordance with the will of the Almighty, in accordance with the laws of creation, in such a matured state. Therefore, you will find before that, they will have to be purified. That purification ensures that that power which they need is granted to them, such that they can use that as a torch and a staff to improve themselves in spirit, to find their way back home to paradise as self-conscious human personality. If, however, they refuse to do that, or they are too ignorant to do that, then they will not be able to find their way back home as self-conscious human personalities. In that case, they will still be trapped in the world of matter, which is gradually undergoing disintegration in accordance with the laws of nature, and being trapped in it, they will have to experience this particular disintegration, and therefore will have to lose their personality. That in itself is what is referred to as the world judgment.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for that comprehensive picture about not a being. It is just a cloak, a body. It is what is in the body, or let's say resides in that body, this spirit being that is being judged. And what is that the spirit is being judged is about its activity. So good or bad, you can say. Yes, there's the world of matter, which has its own cycle, lifespan of, in like you mentioned, let's say birth and death of a planet or the sun, within the solar system or any other physical body. They all have a lifespan. But that is not the judgment, it's not about that. However, as you again made clear, for us human being spirits to be, in quote, spiritually judged, we need, it's happening within this world that we are living on. So, the planet, the earth that we have, it has to be there, while this goes on. So, you can see, you have to see the whole big picture. That's what Gregory pointed us to make us see that. And that's the context where all this activity is taking place. And when, again, like we mentioned earlier, if there's only a part of the picture that you have, you are not going to have a proper understanding of it. Not to say something is wrong as such, but it's not a complete picture, a part picture, which means you don't have the full picture. You only have a part picture. So it's really important to have this, you could say, wide and deep understanding of these activities of the final judgment. And then, as we said earlier about the climate change, we think of it only as earthly. Yes, on the surface it is earthly. But then what is behind it? Well, human activity. What is human activity? Not just the material. There's also the spiritual. We have thoughts, we have our desires and wishes. All of these things manifest. Whether you see them physically or not, they are there. So that is giving us a bigger, all-rounded picture of the activity of life, of human life. And of course, all of that interacts with the other beings that are around us as well. So in the world that we live on Earth, we have all this influence going on, either to influencing us or we are influencing the world. So all this is creating the big picture, which we need to be aware of or conscious of. And that is what we find in the Grail Message, the explanations and the structures of this world that we live in. So thank you, Gregory, for that. I just want to continue on looking at this last judgment. So Gregory, the question is, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? So it looks like we are living in climate change. When we use the word climate change, we mean the big dramatic change. Okay, we can see the climate changing. So let me ask you that, Gregory, are we living in the climate change and are we also living in this final judgment?
The final judgment refers primarily to the human personalities that have incarnated. Climate change refers to the impact of the human personalities, or the collective impact of human personalities on the harmonious motion that existed or that continues to exist within the lifespan of, say, the Earth. So most likely it will be, on the one hand, you have the so-called climate change. On a more global, not even global, on a cosmic scale, in the world of matter, or in creation as a whole, you have the world judgment, which is impacting on the human personalities. Not, like we said, kept stressing, not on matter, because matter is temporal, means it comes into existence, it integrates with different radiations, it matures, it gets to a state, and subsequently it has to disintegrate. The human personality in its activities only cause perturbations within the harmony. That means they can even throw stones or grains of sand in a well-oiled machine. That's the best they can do, and can then cause some local catastrophes, which catastrophes is not beneficial to them. Whereas when you make mention of the last judgment, that is within creation, and that has an impact on the maturing human spirits who set out from paradise as unconscious spirit germs who have been granted an opportunity to mature within a given period. And in this so-called last judgment, they have to prove themselves whether the opportunities granted to them, they have made use of it in this particular school. For they need not be in the world of matter when it disintegrates to its primeval substances. The so-called last judgment, one can look at it on a very small scale, in which you have that a human personality, through its activities, at the point of departure from the earth, it becomes earthbound due to its ignoble activities or some other activities. It becomes earthbound. In that particular case, it has lost its physical body. But for one reason or the other, it still remains in the nearest neighborhood of the earth to experiencing the changes going on the earth, even experiencing the disintegration of its own body. And activities, both noble and ignoble, around the earth, is still able to experience them because it's unable to sever itself and move away. Now, one may consider what such a human spirit will have to experience when it sees all these so-called world wars, people destroying themselves for no reason. Of course, it will not be happy about it, but it is earthbound due to its activities. Such will be the case when the human personality, who is supposed to have severed itself and rise up to its origin, is unable to sever themselves. The experiences which it encounters in the disintegration of that which is matter will so much have a terrible impact on it that that personality will lose its initial human form and will revert back to its primeval state of unconsciousness. Much of that which is discussed here, the individual may examine the work in the light of truth to get details of how these things come about.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for your answer there. And unfortunately, we have now run out of time and come to the end of our show tonight, listeners, on the topic of, are we living in climate change or the final judgment? Hope you've enjoyed the discussion, although it's been a little brief compared to what we normally have, which is just 2 hours, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. usually. So again, I apologize for our technical issue at the beginning of the show. We started at 6:40 p.m. tonight, unfortunately for that. So hopefully we'll get everything working for next week, and we'll be on time. Now, as we know, listeners, this show is all about introducing the Grail Message. So I'd like to end, as usual, from the first page, you can say, or the forward of the Grail Message, which is titled, For Your Guidance. The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they're detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such, it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Aprushin. Dear listeners, in case, if you are interested to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, that's Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing listeners a very beautiful week ahead.
Same from me, listeners. Have a beautiful week ahead. We'll be back as usual next Tuesday, hopefully on time, 6 p.m. UK time, till 8 p.m. With another topic. Good night and God bless. Bye.